Welcome, dear viewer, to the twilight of the Republican Party, the Republican Civil War. It's all began, this is the moment, and it's really a remarkable moment because this was a long time coming. There's been a really long time where there's been a separation between the conservative side of the Republican Party and what you would call the right-wing idealist side of the Republican Party, or as a lot of people are calling it these days, the groypers. So those are the two sides, and it's been a really long time because this fraying has happened for a while. That there's been people who want to keep things the same, and there's been people who, while they're not left-wing revolutionaries, they are still revolutionaries who just happen to agree with a lot of the traditional principles of the Republican Party. And I think that's the best way to define it, Republican Party, because that's really where all of them coalesce. And the reason for this, which will be my point, spoiler alert at the end, is that the reason for this fray is that the Republican Party itself has been unable to conserve the things that it said it wanted to conserve. And so now a lot of those things are gone. And when those things are gone, what happens is there are people who think that they just want to keep things going as they are, and there's people who want to rebuild what was lost. And that as more ideals go away, there are more people who want to rebuild those ideals. So that's really the fraying of the Republican Party in like the abstract satellite view. But I want to get into this specific issue because it's been really crazy. I had to watch, I kid you not, 5 hours of content over this in like the last day in order to really keep up with what was going on. Particularly from our first customer, which is Nick Fuentes. And Nick Fuentes, if you don't know about him, which some people don't, and if you don't know about him, he is kind of the leader of the groypers. He is the one who created the term groyper, and he's probably the most far right, so to speak, mainstream person. Mainstream in that a lot of people watch him and a lot of people take him seriously now. Now, that is a dubious proposition as to if you should take him seriously. And the reasons for that, I would think, are that I tried to watch his response video. And I did watch his response video, almost all of it. Almost all of the almost 3 hours of it or something. But how this all started was a few days ago, I think it was like 3 days ago, Mark Levin, who is a very mainstream conservative Republican guy, at the American Jewish Congress meeting, I think that's what it's called. Whatever it's called. I'm pretty sure it's that, though. He made a very scathing speech about Nick Fuentes and about Tucker Carlson. And that brings us into our other characters. I really should introduce all the characters first. Is that on the far right side is Nick Fuentes. And then, come on, Kat, what are you doing? Make a decision, please. Anyway, so we have Nick Fuentes, who is sort of the leader of the alt-right aspect of this. And then we have his compatriots, so to speak, which I think are best defined as Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. And Candace Owens has, there's too much to explain with her, but she's kind of a peripheral part of this civil war at the moment, so I'm not going to go crazy with that. But it's really Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes on the groyper side. Nick Fuentes for representing the groypers themselves, and as many on the other side will complain, Tucker Carlson for giving them a platform to be represented. And on the other side, the two main characters are Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro. There, again, are other peripheral characters, but those really are the main ones. Those are the two who have launched an attack against Nick Fuentes, and they've both launched it within the last few days, which is why Nick Fuentes responded last night. And it's hard to decide who to go for first, but I think I'm going to start with how Nick Fuentes handled things, because that's really the side in question. And then we'll get soon to the side that is questioning them and why they are questioning them. So Nick Fuentes, wow, it was really difficult to watch. It was essentially, his points, it's the Jews. That's really what he said. He said everything is the Jews' fault. The Jews are coming for him, and he said anti-Jewish things in the past, and really, like, according to him, kind of all the problems in the country are caused by the Jews. And I always find that to be a very shallow point of view. Like, there are real issues in the country, and if the idea is really when I say Jews, I mean Jews and Israel, because the idea is that the Jews are manipulating America so that we can be a better ally to Israel, and that's really his point there. But like, there are many other issues that the Jews would, let's take his proposition at face value, would really not care about at all. Like, do they really care about the immigrants in this country much? Do they really care about the labor markets here? Do they really care about SNAP, Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program? It's the one that's being canceled right now, or sort of canceled. But they wouldn't care about those things. So you really, the blaming the Jews thing, especially when you just say it over and over again. Because I kid you not, he said it for an entire hour. I sat there, like, playing some video game, waiting for him to get to the point. Like, why is this the Jews' fault? Why are the Jews doing this? What's this whole thing about? And it was kind of just like a rambling on about how the Jews are attacking him and the Jews are calling him bad names. And it's really boring to me. So it's the bar is very low in terms of what the conservatives are actually going after here. Like, you don't have to say much, but a lot of people are taking Nick Fuentes seriously now. And they're taking him seriously because of the failures of the conservative side to address a lot of problems within their own ideology to begin with, and to correctly represent their own ideology. So just to finish with Nick Fuentes, like, what Ben Shapiro said about Nick Fuentes, because he's responding to what Ben Shapiro said, and Ben Shapiro basically just played a bunch of clips of Nick Fuentes talking, and Nick Fuentes saying mean words. And Nick Fuentes said that is a bad representation of what he's all about, and that it's disingenuous. But the problem I have with this, and I think it's a very reasonable problem, is that Nick Fuentes didn't deny these views that he had. What he passed them off as is saying that he was edgy. He was being edgy, and that was that's what young people do these days. But it's like, there's a difference between edgy and just saying, like, bad things that you think, and without, like, even a joking tone to it. And because in the end, when someone says something, you shouldn't take it as fact and truth of their deepest held beliefs. But if they don't correct themselves when given the opportunity to, which he has gotten a billion opportunities to do, then you have to start thinking a different thing about the whole thing. That was a lot of things in one sentence. Moving on, is that the reason I found it really unconvincing is because in the interview that Nick Fuentes did with Tucker Carlson, and to give a proper timeline here, Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes have an interview. Then Mark Levin criticizes Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson. Then Ben Shapiro criticizes both of them. And then Nick Fuentes makes this response video. But back to the interview where he was with Tucker Carlson, he said that there was some date on the calendar, I don't remember, December something, and he said it was a special day because it was Joseph Stalin's birthday, and that he's an admirer of Joseph Stalin. Like, see, that's where, like, the edginess crosses the line. And I'm not sensitive to this sort of thing, but really, you're a fan of Stalin? Are you serious? Why would you even bring that up? Like, that's not just edgy. It's just like you're trying to tell people that you actually like horrible people. So that is the thing being attacked right now. And Tucker Carlson for platforming, and as Ben Shapiro says, for toning down Nick Fuentes' views to be more palatable to the general public. So that's what the conservatives are competing against. And the conservatives are losing. They have been losing for quite a few years. Like Nick Fuentes was a nothing burger 10 years ago. He has never been more popular. He has millions of followers. Like as he said in his rebuttal, his interview with Tucker Carlson got like 5 million views in a few days, which was like the one of the most viewed things Tucker Carlson has ever done. So yeah, that is what the conservatives are competing against. And it's really not that strong. And they are losing. And why are they losing? And I want to start with how they went about this after the interview took place. Mark Levin made a speech, which I watched this morning, a speech to the American Jewish Congress, and what he said, very angrily, and the whole time, sorry, I made notes because I needed, there was a lot of stuff to say here, is that, and his tone was really angry the whole time, like out of control angry, like as I'm going to bring up a lot, there was a lot of clutching of the pearls today. I brought some pearls to clutch because that's how much pearl clutching happened on the conservative side. And that he said that Republicans actually should engage in cancel culture. And of course, the obligatory from him and from Ben Shapiro saying that, oh, the government shouldn't do it. But we as a movement should absolutely cancel people, and that we shouldn't debate people who disagree with us on things that we deem undiscussable, which, of course, he went to say a lot was about the Jews. And sorry, just one sec. Okay, continuing. I just wanted to make sure I read my notes and didn't waste your time there. So, Mark Levin said, of course, as I just said before, that the Republicans should cancel people. They should engage in it. They should purge the radical poison from their party, and that the Democrats fell to a similar radical poison. And this is something that is of top priority because otherwise the party will be completely consumed by people who hate all of the ideals of the party. And I'll get back to this because I think Mark Levin was the main attacker, and Ben Shapiro essentially echoed a lot of what Nick Fuentes, Jesus, I'm really losing it. A lot of what Mark Levin said, but his point overall was that we have to reject the radicalism in the Republican Party, not because it's like an undermining poison, he didn't really go into that, but just because nobody likes it. That Republicans don't like it, moderates don't like it, Democrats don't like it. And if we make that our political base, then no one will vote for us and we'll lose. Then that was, obviously he was also just mad at Nick Fuentes for criticizing the Jews, which, that's kind of fair. The criticisms that Nick Fuentes puts out about Jews they've always been kind of petty. So I can understand that. But back to Mark Levin, is that he really does think that the conservatives have the moral high ground, that the conservatives can just purge these radicals, purge these people who want to bring about or restore a right-wing principled nation, so to speak, a Christian ethno-state. And he thinks that it's really important to do all this stuff. Oh God, that was incoherent. But just taking a deep breath for a second and trying to read, but it's not working. And that if Nick Fuentes and his ilk succeed, that all of the good things about the Republican Party will be destroyed. And when those things are destroyed, there will be nothing left to defend. And he really made like strong statements that we are going to stop all of them and they can try to march on us and we are going to win. And there are many of us who will stand up forever to make sure that these right-wing radicals won't win. And all of this stuff, it felt lots of pearl clutching. And the reason for this is because, of course, one, that they feel vulnerable. They feel vulnerable because they, like I, know that they are losing right now. that their support is waning and the radical Republican support is increasing. I mean, this is evidenced by the entire history of the Republican Party in the 21st century. It started out with George W. Bush Jr. Wait, actually, I think W means, yeah. Anyway, George Bush from 2001 to 2008 was very much a traditional conservative. Even Reagan was probably, but I don't want to go too far into that because I'm not well researched on Reagan. But both of them were kind of friendly, middle of the road conservatives who were just there to kind of conserve. But they didn't really conserve things. Within their reigns, every time a Democrat would come into the presidency, things would change. Things would change that would hurt that base of people who wanted things conserved. And then every time a Republican would come into the White House, even with majority rule in the whole government, nothing would be reversed. Nearly nothing would change. In fact, sometimes things got worse. And the problem is that old conservative archetype failed to conserve. And that's why Trump came into being in the first place. Like, it's been a long time to remember, but a lot of these conservatives are pretending they're pro-Trump and they're MAGA and that they're on the side of the movement. But they all hated Trump's guts from the beginning. That Trump said all kinds of outrageous things that were very disrespectful, and the Republicans really hated him. But there was so much support for Trump that came from the alt-right, the extreme right, the people, the groypers, so to speak, the pre-groyper groypers, that Trump won. That Trump won the primaries, and nobody worried about it, and then it all came to pass. And I think this is a real symptom of the conservatives, is that they don't care about the things that are going wrong until they have solidly gone wrong, and then they usually surrender to them. Like, all of these conservatives are defending the MAGA movement, a revolutionary movement, a make America great again. That is a change. That is not just, let's keep things the way they are, make sure nothing goes wrong. That is not at all what's going on here. And they all came onto that side and want to pretend that it's sort of the old conservative side, but it's not. And they were all mad about it to begin with. But so to act like they are the ones who represent the MAGA movement has always been rather ridiculous. And they've been losing ground because they haven't conserved anything. Because every time a conservative has been in power, nothing was conserved. And I hate to beat the point down, but this is the archetypal moral failure of the conservatives. That they want to keep things the same. They're clutching their pearls about people having beliefs that are more radical than their own. I'm just going to hold these up because there's a lot of pearl clutching to be happening here. The beliefs that they are fighting against, that they're making this very dramatic moral stand against. It's like, you have no morality to stand up on. I'm sorry, you don't. Nobody takes seriously what the old school conservatives have to say, because the old school conservatives conserved nothing. And all these radicals know this. All these Nick Fuentes types criticize them all the time about stuff like this, which is why they voted for Trump, and why Trump, we gotta say it, went into power in 2016 and was kind of conservative. He was not as radical as he is now. He is much more radical now than he was then, and he was voted in again. So, like, the Republican Party itself, Mark Levin was saying that, we will not surrender to these people. We will fight them off. You failed. You've lost. I don't want to beat a dead horse here. What was it? Or feed a fed horse. But the Republican Party is now a radical party. It's a radical party, and that's not going anywhere, because the conservatives within the party have largely kept the radicalism in check, which means that a lot of the changes that I'd say probably the majority of the party wants now have not truly happened. And that is a deep problem that these conservatives are noticing, and they're trying to get out of. But the way they have always handled opposition is why this has happened. And I'm going to call this the Cold Wall, where whenever something is going wrong, the traditional conservatives will usually just deny it. And then when someone really brings it up in a way that starts to feel uncomfortable, they will push them out the door. They'll say, you're too radical. We don't want anything to do with you. We are the morally righteous. And they're just kind of silent banishing people, throwing people out the window, defenestrating them. And this leads to them continuing on their path of malconservation, that they're very bad at looking in on their own behavior. And it kind of makes sense on a conservative level. If you are about conserving the norm, you don't want to look at your inner behavior. You don't want to reflect on what you're doing, because reflection leads to change. And as a conservative, you don't want change. And this is where it's quite tricky, because their lack of flexibility, I think, as the modern world developed, like the modern, last few decades developed, things changed in society due to technology and the world order after the fall of the Soviet Union, where, how would I put this correctly? Where the old values no longer served, where the old values simply, they failed to keep institutions safe from corruption from the left, because the left is the revolutionary party to begin with. They're the real revolutionaries. And they have been winning. And this is the issue, is that the conservatives thought, I think during the Cold War and before the Cold War, that the religious moral order of Christianity and of free markets was absolute. That it was untouchable, and during the Cold War, our enemy was the Ruskies, was the commies, and so this country will never fall to them. And it was kind of supposed to be self-evident to everyone that nothing of this sort would even occur. And yet, the left has successfully taken over most of the institutions that the conservatives were about conserving. Like, to like young white men, the most attacked group in the country, who are a large amount of the groypers, is that they can't get jobs anymore. If they try to go to college, they are outcompeted by every other race and sex and gender identity. All of these different things, they are outcompeted by, because the left took over those institutions. They took over government institutions that allowed this to happen in the first place. They took over government, they took over schools, they took over corporate lobbies, they took over all of these things, and they injected their values in. Their diversity, equity, and inclusion. And conservatives sat back and did nothing as the schools were taken over, as discrimination against young white guys, I think mainly, just ran rampant across the country. And the left literally had carte blanche. They had carte blanche on everything they wanted. The conservatives did nearly nothing to defend, and occasionally they would get mad about the left spending too much money on their social bribery programs. And then they would, of course, just surrender and do it anyway, because their own base. And this is the real bottom of the pit, is that conservatives don't only lack a reflection, a self-reflection that's essential for growth, but perhaps the idea of conservation is itself often built on moral failure. Is that their moral failure was all they just want. The idea of conserving, sorry, I'm trying to get to a big point here. The idea of conserving is not a moral point. It is just I like things the way they are point. I am comfortable. These are not ideals that serve to make great morals. These are not ideals that drive societies. They are ideals that can help keep the things that are important to a society going. But if you forget about those important things, if you forget why the country was established in the first place and the ideals, and you're just like, I actually like the price of my house. I want to keep it the same. That's another thing. None of the young people can buy houses because they're all way too expensive for all kinds of reasons, which are the same as this. Is that the country has been not conserved. And even the parts that were conserved were not good. That there is no principle on which all of this is built. It's just people in the Conservative Party want to keep things the same, even if those same things are bad. And that's why this whole groyper movement has developed in the first place. That's why the Conservative Party is losing and losing and losing. Like, we have to be honest, with the Trump victory, the Conservative Party largely died. And now these last few months, the conservatives have been trying to make a comeback to try to retake the party. And I'm sorry to say for them, because I think the groypers are largely wrong about a lot of what they say. They're blaming the Jews for everything. It's like there's this far off boogeyman, and we don't have to look at the people in our own lives who are doing the things that are destroying our lives. So we can just say it's this evil cabal, this evil, crazy cabal on the other side of the world that is manipulating everything we're doing, and it's all their fault. And if we defeat them, everything will be okay again. And it's just not going to work that way. That is not how it is. Because the conservatives in our society, and not just Republican conservatives, people who wanted to conserve the order in which they were born, decided to conserve bad things. They decided to conserve things like institutional theft in the form of Social Security and the other entitlements. They decided to conserve racial discrimination through diversity, equity, and inclusion and affirmative action. Gotta love affirmative action. Like these things are mainstream talking points that only the far right has managed to push back to the degree where we are now. A few years ago, there was basically no freedom of speech. Twitter was under Jack Dorsey, and you couldn't even say a thing. I would probably be banned from YouTube by now, back then, if I was making these videos then. And the far right is the only people who have pushed this back. So while you shouldn't take at face value what the far right is saying, what the groypers are saying, you should understand that they are both much more effective than normal conservatives because they're actually trying to change something into an ideal rather than just keep things the same for fear of change. And because they are making complaints that go against the core of your ideology. What have you conserved? Nothing. Nothing has been conserved. Basically nothing. I was trying to think of like some examples of things that I could say, but there really is nothing that has escaped that. Everything has changed, and the Conservative Party is in this sort of Cold Wall fantasy dream where they just want to say, "Oh, everything's the same. Shut up. Don't ruin my moment." And it's like, this moment, the conservatives, the old conservatives, had a responsibility. The Republicans, they had a responsibility to parent, to guide society in a better direction, in the direction of their original Christian moral ideals. And they failed to do so. They failed to do so, and I know this is a scathing critique, but the individual voters in the Conservative Party failed to do so, and they didn't care. And this is the result of what is happening. So like when I hear people like Mark Levin going on and making these angry speeches about resisting the alt-right, the groypers, they really fall on deaf ears because this is all their fault. The reason that there are all these radicals now is their fault. They made these radicals. They created the situation which would encourage their rise. They did nothing to stop it. And they are the victims of their own failure here. And so I really encourage conservatives, and especially these Jewish Congress meetings, because I was actually at one recently, and it was a very similar thing. We're going to fight and we're going to win. And it's like, no, you're not. This sort of just silence the opposition. We don't even need to argue with you lowlives. It's not working because You've made everyone who has any valid complaint about the way we're running things as conservatives and of society as a whole as just either leftist equivalent or just some stupid racist who we shouldn't even let sit at the dinner table. This is not going to work, and this has not worked. So I really encourage them to look inward at what they have lost in terms of conserving and try to figure out how to get it back. Because if you don't, I am telling you, I am imploring you that the far right will continue to grow. It will continue to grow, and people saying really kind of uneducated things like Nick Fuentes will just continue to grow until you're surrounded by them. And then you will no longer exist as a party. You'll be like the Libertarian or the Green Party, having your little conventions while the real work is being done up on Capitol Hill. This is your future, unless you become a little more radical. You have to become a little more radical, take on the moral challenges of our society, the ones you said you wanted to take on. Everyone says, oh, on the Conservative Party, we want to stop mass immigration. We want to stop this corporate fraud and welfare fraud and all these things. And nothing is ever done. Nothing. They never do anything about this. Like, basically, Trump is the only one who has kind of changed a few things. Republicans don't even try to change a few things without him. And I really want this conservative wing to win, because the groyper path is one of just utter stupidity and civil war. It really is. That we end up nowhere. It's just chaos and pain. It's blood and tears. That is where this all leads. And we'll have another reckoning like World War II or something. And then everyone will go after it, and they'll be like, oh, one day everyone just went crazy. Everyone just, they just changed. And it's like, no. Our society decayed because people didn't conserve the things that needed to be conserved, including their morality. And that is the real issue. So stop clutching your pearls, think about what is being said to you, and go towards the main issues. Because you can just literally, all these groypers in 3 seconds will throw the Jew thing right out the window. They don't care about the Jew thing. It's just a convenient excuse for them calling you and their parents and the people in their society moral failures. Because they would rather not do that, because that's very discomforting to people. So it's better as this far off cabal. So take responsibility for the future you want to make, for the future you want to have, or even the future you want to conserve, because you're losing. And I don't want you to lose. I want you to win, because there is a subsection of conservatives, probably between the groypers and the real, I need to conserve everything no matter what people, who are actually the proper light and guidance for society. They were the ones who built America to begin with. And they are the ones who will hopefully guide America into the future. But this is not the way. And this conservative movement needs self-reflection, and it needs it now. And I really hope it gets it. Because if not, what's going to happen is there's going to just be a stupid right and maybe a smart right, and then a stupid left and a smart left, and everyone's going to fight, and things will get much worse before they get better. And I really don't want that for us, because of course the young people will be the ones who will have to fix it, because the old people who voted in all these stupid policies will not even care anymore or be dead. Anyway, that is my take on the conservative civil war, and I really hope people do something with it, because time is running out. The groypers are increasing in number. I think this was very evident in the recent congressional staffers scandals, where chats were uncovered where they were saying stuff like Heil Hitler and crap like that. And we need to watch out, because if you don't give people smart things to believe, they will believe stupid things. And I want to conserve everything, but also I'm not going to do anything about our institutions being completely encroached upon day after day, is not a smart position that young people can get behind. So I implore you to do better, because our time is running out, and those of us in this sort of center ground don't want to have to do all the work in a wasteland that the Conservative Party will leave behind. Anyway, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. I am a little put down by doing all this, and I really appreciate you watching. And please give me a comment if you disagree. I really want to discuss this more, because this is probably the most important subject of our time. Because the left is a very stagnant party. They know exactly what they want, and they're going to tomorrow and 100 years from now. But the right has a chance to be a civilizational cultural center, a force of civilizational development. They are the ones who drive society forward after the revolution. They are the Napoleon after the French Revolution. I know it didn't really work out so well for him, but the point being that they're the ones who build. And we can't have a society without people who are not building. And right now, nobody is building. And I really hope we get there. But anyway, more in the comments, please, and talk to you later. Bye. Okay, that didn't work. Why? What? This remote